then what they did at 15 was they sent me to Borstal, which is like young men's prison. First time was 13 months, second time was 17 months. And then I found myself in a single cell on my own with a lot of disposable time. And all I did was read. I read so much. I read so much. And then I found a little red book called The Rudiments and Theory of Music, and I taught myself to read the musical stave, notes, timings, all that stuff. 3 years before I picked up an instrument, I could read music
Mm.
without. I learned music without an instrument, which is bonkers.
Mm.
Now the next thing is, 50% of the people in prison don't need to be in prison. It's this pound of flesh thing. You could release 50% of the prisoners on the prison in the prison estate today without them being a threat to the community.
Hello, just a quick insert here from your dear leader. Couple of points in this chat with Christian. We ran into some technical difficulties, so when you hear a jingle, it's not the end of the episode, as the case might be normally. It's just a quick transition, and we'll jump right into it afterwards. And you can find Christian's book, Resilient Childhood Adversity to Cambridge University, through the links in the show description. Follow his social media and his website for more information. It's about to be published in the near future. Also, just a reminder to press the internet buttons, meaning follow the show, share with a friend, and send any thoughts or feelings or feedback to talkingasspodcast@gmail.com, or use the website, and you will be either praised or ruthlessly ridiculed on the show. Now, here's Christian Austin with his fascinating story. But anyway, Christian,
Yeah.
welcome. I've read some of your story. I read the article on Varsity Magazine, which everyone can find online. But it's nice to hear it from the horse's mouth, as they say. And you don't look like a horse, so an attractive horse.
I'm working on that.
Yeah.
I'm working on it, man.
Yeah. So let's go to the beginning, man. So where are we? What decade is it when you come to this world, and where in the world?
Oh man, I was born in Cyprus in 1963. My father was in the British Army, hence my being born in a British military hospital in Decalia, Cyprus. Stayed there for 9 months and then returned to London with my mum, my dad, and at that point there were me and two siblings, a special needs brother who's a year older, 2 years older, sorry, and a sister who's a year older than me, and my younger sister wasn't born then. She was about to be born when we came back to London.
So at what age would you say, I don't know if you'd call them problems, but you ended up in a lifestyle that didn't take you anywhere very good for a while. So what age did the problems start?
Started at 6 years old. The first thing I remember, what basically happened was my father was gay in the 1960s, so it was a criminal offence. You could be imprisoned for any homosexual activity, and many homosexuals, or we call them gay people now, so homosexuals a bit random. They'd marry and have children as like a smokescreen. So my mother was my father's smokescreen, basically. So I'm sure he was still part of the gay scene, but hiding that from my mum, or possibly not. I'd have no idea about that. But obviously, when you suppress these kind of emotions, which I'm guess his reactions must have been repression. He hit the bottle hard, and he hit us hard, all of us. I watched him break my mother's nose, her ribs. He used to beat. He was variously a hairdresser and a dog breeder. So he used to beat us with dog leads, the chain end or the leather end, depending on the extent of his wrath. So my early years, I've blocked a lot of them out. But 6 years old, I watched him. What I thought was stealing money from the gas meter. He used to put coins in the gas meter for gas and electric and stuff like that. I watched him take money from the gas meter, and he left the house. And I did the same. I copied him. And then I went to the sweet shop before school, ordered as much sherbet as I could possibly get, and flooded the playground with sherbet. Pink, red, blue sherbet, everything. The teachers didn't know where all this stuff came from. The next thing was my mum put us in school so she could continue working during the school holidays. We'd go to like a special school, and I was in the playground, and I just left the school, went down the street, found some blocks of flats, and I stole a bicycle. I cycled it back to the playground, and the teachers were like, "Where'd you get the bike?" And I said, "Oh, this boy up the road lent me it." And they grabbed me, I said, look, I've got to take it back to him. They said, no, we can't just let you leave with the, there's traffic out there. Took me in the office. Next thing, a policeman is ushered into the office. He spotted his son's bicycle outside the school, leaning against the fence, the bicycle I'd stolen, which at that point I should have given up any ideas of a criminal career. And those were the first two instances of criminal activity, I suppose. And then we moved from London to a place called Farnborough, and I just started fighting. What my father taught me was to use the fists, and I was a problem for the teachers. I was fighting all the time. And at 12 years old, me and some of my friends smashed up some machines on a building construction site. And I went to court and they put me in council care. They call it care, which is where there was so much sexual abuse was going on, you know.
So that's the first time you're taken away from home and put somewhere else is at 12. Man, there's a lot there. First of all, your dad being closeted gay and sort of fake married to your mom. Do you resent that, or do you feel sad for him now, or empathetic? How do you feel about that now?
I was so angry with him because he sexually abused me at 16. The irony is, at the care homes, um, I could hear the screams in the night, but luckily, I was violent, so I was no victim in that sense. So the night watchman that was making all the other boys cry and scream in the night didn't come anywhere near me because he knew what happened. But it's having swerved that bullet in the care homes. My own father sexually abused me at 16, and that was a different thing. I couldn't be violent towards my dad. He was the monster under the bed. So when it came to him, I didn't run away. I didn't beat him up or anything. It was just like he was the monster. I spent 3 years in those care homes, and we used to just run away, man. We used to, it was bad. They used to come in and the headmaster would come in and beat you in the night because someone raided the tuck shop or something. So we used to just run away and we'd rob places, and all we wanted was cigarettes, sweets, and food, cash for food. So we'd rob the fruit machines and cigarette machines and stay away as long as we could. For 3 years, I ran away and kept getting caught and run away again until I was 15. Because at 15, they can actually lock you in a young man's prison.
So yeah, 15 you become criminally responsible, whatever the term is, right? So it's like a different part of the law that you now have to deal with when you're 15.
It was ironic because I kept running away, and then this one place in Winchester where most of the sexual abuse went on, they called me in the office and said, "See all these yellow sheets in this folder?" I said, "Every time you abscond, we have to fill out one of these sheets, and we've had enough. You're going next door to be reassessed." I was reassessed to this assessment centre, which was next door to the home I was in, and they said, "Right, we're going to send you somewhere now where you're not going to want to run away." And it was true. For 18 months, I didn't want to go anywhere. They had 32 horses. We were taught riding, horse management. They had bricklaying courses, carpentry courses. I first picked up a guitar and learnt some guitar chords. So, but it was never going to last because I was so dysfunctional. I was basically damaged goods. So after 18 months, I did. I absconded and then found myself in London in trouble again. And then when it was explained to me about the 15-year-old thing, I thought, oh shit, now I'm for it.
Yeah. That one place that was kind of decent where you had nice things to do, and yeah, that was the mistake, right? Could have gone on a different path. I guess, well, now where you've ended up is very cool and interesting and stuff, but it took you a long, long, hard way to get where you are, right? And it could have been easier had
Man,
you stayed at that place, right?
yeah, but man, I say it now, people go, "What about the years you wasted?" And I'm like, because the thing was, then what they did at 15 was they sent me to Borstal, which is like young men's prison. First time was 13 months, second time was 17 months. And then I found myself in a single cell on my own with a lot of disposable time. And all I did was read. I read Hunter S. Thompson, Ginsberg. I read all the Pulp Fiction, skinhead books, Suedehead books, English Pulp Fiction. I read so much. I read so much. And then I found a little red book called The Rudiments and Theory of Music, and I taught myself to read the musical stave, notes, timings, all that stuff. 3 years before I picked up an instrument, I could read music without. I learned music without an instrument, which is bonkers. But and then everyone says the wasted years.
Sorry, was that in the youth prison already when you started reading and learning
Yeah,
music?
yeah, yeah. I was just my mum invested in me a really insatiable thirst for knowledge, and my father instilled in me self-destructive bent that was just, I still struggle with now. It's a Christian 1 and Christian 2. My mum created Christian 1, my dad created Christian 2, and Christian 2 is always trying to destroy Christian 1. Thankfully, for 62 years, he hasn't managed it. But they say the wasted years, and I'm like, do you know what? My dad died in about 2003 or 4. He was a complete alcoholic by then. He was found face down floating in his own pond in Norfolk. I swear I had nothing to do with it, and I've got a brilliant alibi. But when they say the wasted years, I'm like, man, I didn't waste those years, because imagine if I had taken the right path at that good school. I'd have a 5-bedroom house in Sandhurst now with 2 cars outside, 3 kids and a cat, and I'd be wearing a white collar and a tie, and I would have nowhere near as interesting a story or a result as I do have today. So it's kind of crazy. So now I'm kind of in some strange way, I have to thank my father in a twisted kind of way. Thanks, Dad,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I've ended up with a remarkable story, crazily remarkable story.
And most likely, if you had ended up in a more traditional pipeline of life, you would have repressed all that stuff, and it may have come out in a catastrophic way one day, right? In some way that it then wrecks your lifestyle of 2 cars and 3 kids and whatever you said, white picket fence.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They call it in rehab, they call it coming out sideways. It would have come out sideways later on, yeah. In rehab parlance. Yeah, of course. So anyway, yeah. Then it was just like, basically, long story short, it was 20 years of and actually the books I was reading was every time I encountered any kind of drug like LSD and heroin and cocaine in these books I was reading by Hunter S. Thompson and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, all that kind of stuff. I'd go straight to the encyclopedia and get myself clued up on what kind of drug it was. It was like I knew at 15, 16 years old that there were 2 things were certain. I was going to become a musician and I was going to become a drug addict.
Yeah. And, well, let's not blame too much of it on Thompson, because at the end of the day, he was often playing a character, and what people forget it as he was a remarkably talented and an interesting thinker, right? You don't have to agree with him on everything, but an interesting guy who, and the point was in the end the writing, the production. It wasn't the drugs, and that's what people forget. But yeah, so you got inspired by him, but then got badly addicted. So
Yeah, I started off within a year. It was ironic because how co- it's mad because before the real sort of drugs came along, me and my friends on my working class council estate were all sniffing glue at 10, 12, 11, sorry, 11, 12, 13 years old. We're sniffing glue. And one day my sister said, "What's wrong with you? Why do you keep sniffing glue? Why don't you go and hang out with Bob and Ellen and just smoke weed like they do?" Well, unbeknown to my sister, they weren't just smoking weed behind that door. I went and knocked on their door, said, "Hey, my sister reckons I should come and hang out with you for a while." "Oh, come in, come in." Over a 12-month period, I went from smoking weed to checking out magic mushrooms, LSD, cocaine, barbiturates, and ended up injecting heroin, which I then did for 17 years, watching my friends drop dead around me, and I somehow managed to survive it.
yeah. None of this is your fault. This is equal parts your sister and Hunter Thompson, it sounds like, right?
Both of them, man. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And let's not forget Ginsberg. All of them, yeah. Timothy Leary, everyone, all of them lot, man, all that crew.
Oh, that guy. Well, he's a dick. Anyway, no. No, I'm kidding. Again, again, like, yeah, it's all about drugs, but interesting thinker, and maybe, some of that stuff you could have read without taking the drugs. But yeah,
Absolutely, no,
so how,
absolutely the craze. Go on.
oh, sorry, so like from sniffing glue as a kid, then getting inspired to do harder stuff, when does heroin come in? And then are you then like smack addicted for,
Yeah, heroin came in, and I very short. That was in that house, and I very shortly had a relationship with the dealer. She was Farnborough's biggest heroin dealer, and I ended up having a 6-month relationship with her. But then what also happened, and then that meant I didn't even have to, the heroin was free. Basically, I was a gigolo, um, just a gigolo, Louis Prima. Um, but the interesting thing was in the house with where I first got introduced to drugs, Bob. There was Bob and Andy, Bob and Andy Clubs. They're both dead now. And Bob had been to Stonehenge Festival 1983, and he came back to the house and he described everything about this festival. And I was just like, wow, man, I've got to go and check this shit out. The last Stonehenge 84, was my first festival. And it's like a month long bazaar with drugs are freely available, openly on sale. And it was around that time I got more into, I did less heroin and more hallucinogens, magic mushrooms, smiley mushrooms, LSD, all the different types of it, microdots, smiley mushrooms, window panes, all these variously named tabs of LSD. And it was the first time I'd encountered a society that it wasn't the dog eat dog world I'd grown up in on the council estate. It was a field full of hippies, and everyone was playing guitars, and they were really chill, just smoking chillums and dropping acid. I was like, wow, man, okay, so this is a bit better than what I've previously experienced. And then I joined the peace convoy for several years, and the heroin slowly, it still took, that was 84, it still took 13 years, fucked on heroin to get away from it. Well, but so basically, yeah, I did 17 years on heroin, and of those years, I spent 10 years in a prison cell for what they call acquisitive crime. Now I'm a criminologist. I know all these terms, and it's called acquisitive crime. So you're stealing stuff to sell to buy drugs.
Mm.
10 years in prison. And also, when the police come and catch you, you don't want to go with them because you know you're going to suffer severe withdrawal symptoms. So you punch them a few times and run away.
Yeah. So they say addicts say in the documentaries are always mostly about America. So they say that because jail and prison are different things. They say that the worst is when you're in jail, which is a temporary facility, and the drugs that come in are shit or people exploit you really badly to they exploit your withdrawal. But then when you get to real prison, once you're sentenced, there's like a whole hierarchy and the system works and you can reliably get drugs. Is that true here as well in England?
That was true. That became true here. Now the thing is, I've always said it, and the reason my friends from my council estate are all dead, or those that did manage to survive are walking around with no teeth, looking like the living dead, is prison was my salvation. Every time I was put in prison, I had no access to those kind of drugs, and I went through my withdrawal symptoms and served my sentence and didn't get any drugs until I came out. And the interesting thing, the difference between my friends who are now dead and me is they were all in prison just going, I can't wait to get out and get some smack. And I was like, I can't wait to get out and have none. What's wrong with you?
Mm.
But every time I returned to my hometown and I was just fighting a tsunami of drugs and crime because I returned to my stomping ground. But around about 1980, mid 80s, mid 80s, heroin started to become available in prisons. And then I was like, shit, what am I going to do now? No more cure. So then I was addicted in and out of prison.
Yeah, that's not good. So, how many times do you think you went through withdrawal, thought you were over the worst, and then ended up back in it? So until rehab took or worked or however you say it, how many times had you already quit heroin?
Oh, must have been several, 6, 7, 8 times. It was just over all the way from when I started in 1981 until I went to rehab the first time in 1997. Now, I'd applied to the rehab twice before. I'd written them letters because I knew I wanted to change. I knew I'd had enough. And both times they said, sounds like you're just trying to avoid a custodial sentence. And they were right, I think. I was as much as I was feeling like I was kind of ready, it was also large part just trying not to go to prison. But then in 97, I was in prison. I wrote them a letter and they wrote back to me and said, do you know what? You sound like you might be ready. Because then this time I had a 8-year-old son and 18-month-old twins, and they were my driver to quit. I looked at my daughter and I knew she'd become a prostitute and a drug addict. I looked at my two boys and I knew they'd become like me. And also when I was in one of the last prisons I was in, there was a friend of mine from London, and me and my friend from Farnborough took him under our wing because he was getting good. He got a lot of heroin in the prison, and everyone knew it. And he was going to be, he couldn't fight his way out of a paper bag. So we looked after him and protected him until one day he said, I'm leaving. And we said, "What's the matter? Who's leading on you?" And he said, "No, no, no, it's nothing like that. I've just been offered to go to HMP The Mount, and I'm going to go there." And we couldn't dissuade him. Someone had lent on him and terrified him, so he went there. Next day on the radio, there's been a stabbing. A man's been killed in HMP The Mount. It was my mate, Alan Jones. He got to that prison. Someone stabbed him to death. And I just started thinking, geez, man, like I've got my kids and it's all going horribly wrong. And Alan's just been stabbed, and that's what's going to happen to me. I'm going to die in prison. I'm going to die being stabbed to death or just of old age in prison. I don't want this life. I don't want it for me or for my children. And they interviewed me for rehab and accepted me.
Yeah, that said it. Well, thank God, but couple of segues there. I said thank God. Number one, when you arrived at rehab, is it the classic 12-step program we heard about, and is religion a big part of it? What, how did it work? Or is it different in England? Do
No,
like a
man.
secular rehab?
Nah, mine was all based on empowerment. Now, the 12-step thing, hats off to anyone that embraces that. You know, you can go, Fleetwood Mac said it, go your own way. Um, but if I'd gone down that route, I wouldn't be drinking a can of beer now because they're just. I've been to two of those meetings in my life, and honestly, I don't. To me, it's awful. You just stand up there and they denigrate, they self-denigrate. My name's Christian, and I've got no control over my life, and I surrender to a higher power and all this. I'm like, no, man, I can't be doing that. I'm in control of me, not some higher power. And I'm not a religious man. If anything, I lean towards a happy blend of Native American wisdom and Buddhism, I guess. But no invisible deities, you know.
And anyone who's experienced trauma or abuse, it's quite common to want maximum control over your life because others have taken it away in the past. Therefore, giving it to some higher power, whether imaginary or real, is maybe feels wrong, right?
Great point. That's a fantastic point. Because yeah, you're right there. I want to control. I need to be in control, of course, because I've relinquished control for so many years and been like, helpless. Mm.
Yeah. The other thing that I wanted to ask about violence in prison. So when you arrive in adult prison for the first time, which facility is it? And is it like famous here in England for being a bad one, or was it meant to be a decent one? Where do you end up?
I was very lucky because it's funny because one of those instances where we escaped from the Isle of Wight, sorry, when we escaped from Winchester Care Home, we got on a ferry to the Isle of Wight and we were on an open top deck, double decker bus. And the bus sailed past these three prisons in Newport and Central Isle of Wight. There's three prisons: Albany, Camphill, and Parkhurst. And we knew we were going there. We'd heard about the other guys from the care homes who graduated to prison, and we knew we were going to go there. And when I first went to the Borstal, because of the violence, and I was also an escape risk, obviously, because I was always absconding from care homes, I was sent to Portland Borstal. Now, Portland Borstal is like the worst Borstal in the south of England, and it's off the coast of Weymouth on Portland Bill. So I was sent there. But as soon as I entered the prison system, I knew loads of people. I didn't have to fight my way to the top. I was already in somewhere near the top of the hierarchy because I'd been up at the top of the hierarchy within the care home system, and I knew half of those guys. Most of those guys from care homes, I met them all later in prisons, obviously. So, likewise, later on, Dartmoor prison.
Yeah, that fact doesn't give a great name for the care home system. If you meet them all in prison later, so what the fuck were we doing in the
I met them
care
all
home?
in prison. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. They were either sexually abused and their lives were destroyed, or they continued and graduated onto borstals and then prisons. And I met them all repeatedly over the successive years. Because there's no such thing as rehabilitation in prison. Don't be fooled. They talk about it. It's all a lot of talk. And there are there's a lot of people that want to help, but they're up against it, man. There's no, I've never seen people I rehabilitated myself. I've done a master's degree from Cambridge University in criminology. I was invited to go and work in prisons. Why would I do that to myself when there's a 60% reoffending rate? Or why would I work with drug addicts when there's a 90% failure rate? Imagine going home with that many nails being smashed into your own head when you get home every evening.
Not a rewarding job when everything you do is like doomed to fail.
No, exactly my point. That's right.
So then Dartmoor, that's a name I've heard, right? You end up there. That's bad. They send serial killers there. Like this is not a good place, right?
Yeah, man, all the baddies went down there. It was built by the Napoleonic prisoners of war. They built their own prison back in the early 1800s, and it's been like that. They keep threatening to close it down because it's just so dilapidated and run down, and they can't close it down because there's not enough prison. This is the problem, you see, that rather than coming up with solutions, successive governments in this country just talk about increasing prison places, how important it is to build new prisons and increase capacity. This was like huge when I was doing my masters in criminology 5 years ago. And now it's become so bad, they're releasing prisoners earlier than they ought to be, to make room, to increase capacity. It's insane.
Yeah. And yeah, this doesn't it doesn't seem like a system overall that's working. So how do you feel a bad system in your daily life in Dartmoor? Where can you see that it's not working? Is it the violence or the gangs or how do you know when you're inside that this isn't gonna work?
Gang thing didn't really occur within the prison system until recently. There was never really a gang problem. There is now, because my research during Cambridge was music programs in prison in HMP ISIS next to Belmarsh in London, and it was all about gangs, 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 gangs on the street being arrested, and gangs within the jails. But back in Dartmoor in 1987, no, 85 to 87, it was more. We have a system which is based on pound of flesh. The system must, the system requires its pound of flesh. You break the law, you steal, you hurt someone, whatever it is you do, they have to take their pound of flesh. And that's where this like 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, whatever it is. But it's detrimental. It's counterproductive because now that I'm a criminologist, I realize it's all about stakes in conformity. Now, stakes in conformity might be your house, your car, your wife, your children. These are the stakes that make you conform. If you go and break the law, you know you might lose, firstly, your job, then you'll lose your house and your car, and then probably your wife and your children. So this is what makes people conform. They're called stakes in conformity.
Yeah. And status, societal status, all of that.
Yeah, everything. Yeah, you lose it. And then when you go to prison, if you only go in for 3 months, okay, that's fine. You're probably going to come out and you're still going to have your girlfriend, your wife, children, and all that stuff. But if you go for a couple of years, you're going to get a letter saying your wife's run off with Johnny, and now Johnny's your children's dad. And then you do your 2 years and you come out alone. You've lost all your stakes in conformity, and you're expected to get a job to reacquire everything you lost within like a few months. And there's a famous paper that was written by the woman who invited me to Cambridge University, Ruth Armstrong and Serena Wright, and it's called Matza. That's the name of an academic, Matza, Matza and the desistance process. Fuck it. It's basically called fuck it. And I did hear that Serena Wright was so happy that just to be writing a paper where she could repeatedly just use the words fuck it all the way through the paper. And what it basically means, it is that thing. You get released from prison, you get a week's money from the government, and you're expected to succeed. And after months of getting nowhere, you go, fuck it. And you go back to being a burglar, a drug dealer, or a shoplifter and then you go back to prison.
Yeah. Yeah. I it's also desperate. Like, how do we what's the solution here? Do you think it should more be like a labor camp where you learn skills, or like a farm where you learn how to take care of horses or something and you leave with a job? Is that what the solution is?
That brings me back to what I was saying about the pound of flesh. Our prison estate is based around this pound of flesh. It's like biblical, it's religious, whatever. They need their pound of flesh. Now, the Scandinavian, you're Danish, right? Originally?
Finish. Yeah. Finish.
Finnish. You're not finished yet, surely. No, the Scandinavian paradigm, My supervisor at Cambridge, Ben Crew, Crew with an E on the end, Ben Crew. All of his research is in Norway, Norwegian prisons. And what they do is exactly what you've just said. They recreate an environment where people get up in the morning and they go to work, they're wearing their own clothes, and they might have conjugal visits, they might have every weekend they're allowed to go home and only do their time during the week. But whatever it is they're doing something over there that's completely right, and we're not.
Mm.
Now, the next thing is 50% of the people in prison don't need to be in prison. It's this pound of flesh thing. You could release 50% of the prisoners on the prison in the prison estate today without them being a threat to the community.
So that's non-violent drug offenses. Is that?
Non-violent drug offences, shoplifting offences, what they're not going to harm anyone. Now, the worst thing about capitalist society is don't touch their money. You steal their money, you're going to prison for a long time. You hurt somebody, you're going, or if you sexually abuse a child, you're going to prison for a lot less time than if you stole their money. And I've watched that for years. I've watched that for 40 years. I've seen that happen. Child molesters get 2 years. Someone who robs a bank gets 15.
Yeah.
But back to what I was saying, release 50% of the prisoners. They're not an immediate threat to society tomorrow morning.
No. See, that's hearing that from you is like there's like a sense of authority in your voice that even if I had read that statistic or very well argued academic paper saying that, it wouldn't have affected me. So there's some value here when I hear from you. And then that made me think like all that thing about violence against sexual criminals in prison. What you've just told me, I think about that totally differently. It's not that they have some kind of thieves' honor and this crime is so reprehensible that you have to beat these people up or worse. It's because a lot of people are victims of it themselves and they're angry, right? Like you just said, that a bunch of people who end
This
up
is what I was
abused
going
in
to
the
talk
care
about.
homes. Yeah.
Yeah, you're hitting on a really good note there because it's basically called criminalisation of trauma. I was criminalised for the trauma I underwent. At school, junior school, one time I went up on the climbed on the roof and I wouldn't come down and my mum had to come and get me and I stole a bike and my mum had to come to the police station to get me and all that, which I told you about. And it was all derived from trauma. And the teachers back in the 1960s probably knew that, but they had no recourse to sending the social services round to your house like they would today. Today, Johnny, being like me, a damaged product, would be spotted in the school system and people would ask questions and someone would go and see him. But there's still so many people, as a consequence of trauma, going down these terrible paths and not getting the sufficient help. And a part of the problem is money. Where do you get the funding? Where do you get the funding to create change within the prison estate? And what do you do with 50% of prison officers who are made redundant because you released 50% of the prisoners?
Yeah. But what you said about alternatives in Scandinavia, so I have a friend who was, he's not anymore, but he was for a long time a prison guard in Finland. And he was always hearing about how everyone admired the prison system. But this is anecdotal evidence, just his story, but I trust him, he's a good guy. He was saying that a lot of the articles that academics then come observe their prison, they're writing about like what you would call the Finnish population. He said that there's a totally different thing going on with immigrants and with the Roma people, gypsies. That there, like for example, he says that with the Roma people, the gypsies, whatever you want to call them or whatever they call themselves, with them he sees the same
Roma. Yeah.
faces. Yeah. With them, he says he saw the same faces all the time, and with them, there's no like this culture of trying to get an education and change your life. It didn't exist. So with them, the recidivism rate was pretty much whatever you would see in England or America or whatever. And then same with immigrants did have gangs. So like the Finnish prisoners only had biker gangs and those guys were known. But within then like let's say Middle Eastern immigrant prisoners, there were gang problems and the same shit you see in America and England. So that some of the academic papers aren't writing about the entire prison population, is what he would say, you know?
Just a select few. A select few. Now, this is there's a thing about having done a music degree. I know what I learned at what age you try to form your own identity, and you bring it into the equation the Roma people and Roma teenagers being in prison. I've recently become part of a Gypsies Friends Travellers group, and they asked me to help them come up with a survey, I helped them create the questions for the survey, and it's all about gypsies within the British criminal justice system. Now, when you're 11, 12, 13, that's the time most people, back in my day, I started bunking school and truanting at 11 or 12. Most of the people in prison that I met a large majority of people in prison also began truanting from school at 11 or 12. So they still have an educational age of 11 years old. I was very fortunate that my mother instilled in me the thirst for knowledge, which she did, because as I said, all I did in prison was read, 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 read. Most of these people who were put into prison, they sit there staring at the wall with nothing to do, no way to end. Might not be able to read. I mean, imagine how awful it would be to be in prison. I was so lucky. I just voraciously read book after book after book after book. I can't imagine what that would be like to sit in prison and not be able to read. Your days are going to be double. Staring at the wall, masturbating, then staring at the wall a bit more, masturbating a bit more, nothing to do. But there's also an enormous ball of creativity within the prison system. Everyone comes up with, not everyone, but many people come up with a little cottage industry. I used to draw and I used to sell my drawings. I used to do copies of the artist, Arthur Rackham. He was like an early 20th century illustrator. I'd do copies and I'd sell them for 30, 40, £50 a piece. That'd pay for my heroin addiction. This is back in 1990, when the heroin was available in the prisons. And I had my own cottage industry. There's people doing portraiture. There's people doing painting. They'll take a photo of you, your wife, and your daughter, and or your kids, and they'll do portraits for you. They'll charge money for it. It's little cottage industries. But this, the gypsy thing, is the same. Educational age of 11 or 12. How are you going to escape recidivism when you've got an educational age of 11 or 12, and you keep that educational age for the rest of your life?
Yeah. And then that must result in a lot of frustration. So things like maybe aggression, fighting, things like that can come from just the frustration that you don't know what's going on around you and you feel like you're being exploited or being made fun
I
of,
think so.
you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you're an outsider. Gypsies in this country are outsiders.
Yes. Is it true? You know them a bit better than I do. You said you work with some. Is it true that it's like not the done thing to do more than secondary education? Like you can't, after a certain year in school, they're told to stay home and not go anymore. Is that like a cultural thing?
It quite possibly is because of the prejudice. Because of the prejudice might be them, but they might be getting prejudice from teachers. They're bound to be getting prejudice from their peers because they're an outsider group.
Yeah, I worked for a fancy private school here in England, and often what they wanted to look at was various national trends and statistics to support certain arguments in the media, right? Because there's always a debate around whether they should exist and blah blah blah. But one year, this must have been whatever, 4 or 5 years ago, I was asked to look at like what's going on with different racial and ethnic backgrounds in England and education. And I stumbled on this fact that that year there was zero people who identify themselves as gypsy or Irish traveler who had completed, was it A levels to a certain standard. Like I was asked to like check the top grades percentages in ethnic groups and see if there's a problem. And I was like, whoa,
Man,
nobody with that ethnic background
no, no, no,
had
no,
top
no, no,
marks from school that year.
no,
That's crazy, right? Like it to me that was like shocking.
man.
What's going on?
You're not going to get a gypsy. If you get a gypsy completing an A levels, I'm not being detrimental in any way, shape, or form here because I know many gypsies and I also spent a long time with the New Age traveling community, which is like the Peace Convoy and the Stonehenge traveller people and all that. But to have a Roma person make it to A levels, that would be one enormous outlier. That would literally you're not going to find many gypsies with an A level because also like school's a legal requirement in this country. Yeah. Now their families, their mums and dads some mums and dads probably want their children to go to school and get a decent education. But others, because of their own experiences 30, 40 years ago, might not want their children to go to school because they know they're going to be picked on and they're going to be prejudiced against. And they will all probably also pull them out of school as soon as at the earliest possible available opportunity.
Yeah.
But I was with the peace convoy people, and the government, the successive governments, all the while I've been alive at least. I've read a lot of books about the Roma people, and back in the 60s, 50s and 60s, they were forced off the road. They were forced to stop living in caravans and traders, and their sites were broken up, and they were forced to live in council houses, and it destroyed them. It turned them all. It did as you'd expect. They became alcoholic. They became deeply, deeply unhappy, and they did the same thing with the in the 80s with the traveller community, New Age traveller community. Like I said, my first festival was Stonehenge in 1984. I've travelled with the Peace Convoy, which is what the media called them, but the New Age traveller community. I travelled with them for the remainder of 1984 until Nostell Priory, which is a mansion house in near Wakefield. There was a huge festival there, and it all went horribly wrong. And the police invaded. They destroyed loads of people's trucks and buses, and 250 of us were were sent to Armley Prison for a couple of weeks. We were all charged with, get this, internal possession of LSD and cannabis, internal possession, no drug tests, no nothing. Just went to court, plead not guilty, go back to prison, plead guilty, get a £25 fine and released. That was kind of like a dry run of the following year because they'd already decided then that there was not going to be a Stonehenge 1985 because they knew that there was like openly drugs on sale at Stonehenge 84, my first festival. They said no Stonehenge 85, and there was this chant. People were writing it on their buses. Go for it, go for it, go for it. Everyone gathered in Savernake Forest near Marlborough in 19. This is well documented on so many YouTube videos called the Battle of the Beanfield or Operation Solstice. They gathered in Savernake Forest. I was with them. We tried to get Stonehenge. The police corralled us in this field. We were there all day, surrounded by riot police. And before dusk, Margaret Thatcher and Michael Heseltine gave the order, destroy the convoy. And the police came in and they started everyone jumped in their buses to run away, to drive away from these approaching policemen with riot shields, helmets, and batons. And the police just went crazy. They had no numbers on their epaulets. It was black boiler suits, completely anonymous. And they started throwing fire extinguishers, flint rocks, smashing windows, buses and trucks with you watch the footage on the Battle of the Beanfield videos on YouTube. It's terror. It's a terror state. But Margaret Thatcher's militia destroying family homes with babies and 6, 7-year-old children, 2-year-old babies, and 1-month-old babies. They're lying in broken glass. It's disgusting. And this is what any kind of a deviation from the norm is
Yeah.
to be
I was gonna say
suppressed.
it's any kind of alternative lifestyle and you're gonna be
Yeah,
fucked. But you could say the same like
yeah.
with travelers here or Native Americans put into reservations and like that. What happens is you're taking people's
Aborigines, the Boer
lifestyle.
War, the blacks, yeah, yeah, the
Yeah.
Boer War, the blacks. The English invented the concentration camp, but instead of using gas, we used cholera and typhoid in the Boer Wars, just corralling people in barbed wire fences and letting them die.
Yeah.
I've read too much, man.
It's certainly sad that it's hard to go against the trend in society and live alternatively. At the end of the day, the long arm of the law either literally pounds you on the head, as was the case often in your time, or nowadays maybe just, in courts pounds you on the head more figuratively. But
Oh man, they brought in new ones. They brought in new laws 2 years ago. If you're living in a truck and there's an offensive smell, if you're cooking a curry and it's an offensive smell, you can be told to move on, and if you don't move on, they'll confiscate your vehicle. If you leave a bag of rubbish outside hanging on your door when you go to bed at night and a fox rags it and there's rubbish on the floor, again, they can just confiscate your vehicle. They've got all these new radical anti-traveller laws. It's dystopian. Anyway, that's the dark side of shit, man. But yeah,
well, that's one part of racial inequalities or differences in prison. What about the other stuff we see in more maybe in American prison documentaries? Was there like a black and white divide in your time in prison? Did you talk to black inmates or was it like a no-no?
it's interesting because in London, back in the day, there were a lot of blacks in London, in the London prisons, but very few in Dartmoor and Portland because they were kind of like trawled from the the south of England, and not so much from London. London had its separate borstals, which were probably in Kent and Essex and the surrounding areas around London, as opposed to like Dartmoor and Portland are like southwest. They're a long way from London. So it's interesting because when I left Clapham at 8 years old, so for the first 8 years of my life, I lived in Clapham, went to school in Clapham, and there was blacks everywhere. You know, I had black friends. I had black. There was just like it was multinational, multicultural in every school in London. And then I moved to Farnborough, very few blacks. And then when I got nicked at 15 and suddenly realised I was going to go to Borstal and I was in London prisons again, suddenly I was an outsider. I was no longer a Londoner. So at one point, I remember we were somewhere in Lambeth. There's got these Lambeth. It's like a hub where all these prison vans. With some of them have got some vans have got room for 10 people. Some of these vans have got room for 20 people in like big lorries with black windows. You know, we used to call them Black Mariahs when I was a kid, and then they became white. But anyway, these holding cells, these hubs, we'd be going. All these trucks would be going from the courts in London, the magistrates' court, the Crown courts, to different prisons. There's this like network that the general Joe public knows nothing about. So I ended up in one of these holding cells, and suddenly I'm 15 years old, and I'm surrounded by these people. I've been told I'm going to Borstal. My mum visits me afterwards, gives some cigarettes to the jailer. I'm given the cigarettes. Now I'm an outsider. I've been living in Farnborough by that point, and in care homes in the south. My London accent's gone, and I've become a bit more bumpkin. And my cigarettes were all stolen from me. 2 packets of cigarettes within seconds were gone. I was no longer a Londoner, I was a victim, which was probably the last time I became a victim because after that was me at 15 years old in a cell with 18, 19, 20 year olds. And I've very quickly learned at that point, listen, mate, you need to pick up your game, otherwise you're going to be a victim because no one here knows you. It wasn't a case of people knowing all the people I knew from the care homes. Suddenly I was just a stranger and I was amongst all these, I was a nobody. And then I was put in the cell in Wormwood Scrubs, waiting to be allocated. And that very evening, put in the cell, and one of those guys that had stolen all my cigarettes was put in the cell with me. 2-man cell, me and him. Immediately, he said to me, right, your shit is mine. And I thought, wow, this is joyous because I knew how to fight 1-to-1.
Mm.
And I I beat him until he was scared enough not just to realise that he weren't having any of my shit and he'd made a really bad mistake trying to pick on me on my own, 1-to-1.
Yeah. So that was was that the first bad prison fight, and how many more would there be?
There'd be loads, man. My book's full of them.
Yeah.
My book's full of them. But that's because I was in the London side of things where I knew nobody. After that, I went to Portland and I knew loads of people, so it was different. But there were still many fights. There's always a new person comes up. There's always someone. It's like dog eat dog world, isn't it? And hierarchy. There's a hierarchy. It's like a pack of dogs. There's always a fight to be the leader. Yeah,
So what happens to someone who doesn't know how to fight at all?
man. There's a chapter in my book. I talk all about this. There's the different rankings of prisoners. You got like you got the victims, yeah, and then anyone in the prison can say to that victim, "I want your shit." When canteen day, I want your shit, and they're going to get it. Then you got the next level of people. They'll pick on the victims, but then there's 3 levels of people above them that'll pick on them and take their stuff. Then you got the next one. Then you got the ones who can take care of themselves, and they might take the shit of the people, the 3 layers of people beneath them. And then you got the gangsters, and they don't take shit from anyone because they're drug dealers and gangsters on the outside, and everyone knows them. So there's this real hierarchy going on. But what happens to the real victims is any money they've got, any tobacco they've got, any food they've got, anything they've got is fair game to everyone else above them. So you sink or swim fast.
Yeah.
And I learned how to swim. I had to.
Yeah. Wow. It's most of us don't really have to like even think about what we do if that happened. I would say like if you're smart, but you don't have to fight, you can maybe somehow organize a situation by manipulation and the right friends to maybe be safe, right? So basically that's a gang. You don't have to call it that, but you kind of have to form some kind of union, right?
Well, you'll gravitate towards similar, like-minded people. Same in any strata of society, you'll graduate towards like-minded people. So if you've got half a brain and you like reading, you're going to like start chatting to someone and the place to meet everyone is in the exercise yard, and you might. the first opportunity to meet people will be in reception. You've just been to the courts, you've been sentenced, and you go to prison, and you're brand new, and there's loads of other people around you. Some of them are old hands; they know exactly what they're doing, and they'll be looking for victims. And you might just strike up a conversation with another guy, and you just go, "Actually, this guy seems cool. You seem cool. Maybe you get put on the same wing. You start hanging out together, and you're right. If you're lucky, you'll get two or three of you, and then people might see you as those three people as a cohesive unit, as opposed to a random walking around on his own. Then he's going to be a victim. So if you need to be shrewd. You need to have your wits about you.
Yeah. Scary. It's weird to me, especially. I mean, obviously there are bad people, and there are people in this world that worse thing. I wish worse things than that on them. But when it's people that, like you said, it's basically the criminalization of trauma, or addiction, or both, then you feel like this is such a sort of terrible, another terrible thing to happen to you. So are you now traumatized by
Yeah,
prison as well? Like, your nightmares
yeah,
now, are they
yeah. It's
about
trauma on
prison?
trauma, stacked up, stacked up trauma, like a stack of coins, man. Trauma, more trauma, more trauma, more trauma, and then it's just like this exponentiality. The trauma creates more trauma, begets trauma, of course.
Yeah.
And
And then a lot of people
education
pass
is
it
the
on to
escape.
others, right?
Well, that's generational trauma, of course. That's another thing altogether. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, because the abused becomes the abuser. This is what generational trauma is all about. Now, I've got a really interesting story from last weekend. I've got, as you know, I'm soon to publish my memoir, and at the moment, I'm working on the front cover illustration. So I went to Manchester last weekend to stay with some friends. She's Chinese. She's an illustrator. I've known her since Cambridge. Now, Sunday, it was all going well. The whole weekend was great until Sunday morning. The 2-year-old boy, they got a 7-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old boy. The 2-year-old boy licked the lid of the peanut butter. Suddenly, the room's full of people in green and machinery and all kinds of stuff because he's got an allergy. Mild allergy, thankfully. He's okay. No, he just had like sneezing loads and he had like red hives all over his face. Now, they had to take him to hospital, the mum and dad, and I've been learning Chinese for 5 years now, so I speak reasonably good Chinese. And they call me Shushu, which is Chinese for uncle. Shushu. They said to their 7-year-old daughter, "You're staying here with Shushu, me, while mum and dad and the 2-year-old get in an ambulance and go to hospital. And I'm left with a 7-year-old girl in a nightie in the house on my own, in the flat." Now, according to conventional wisdom, because I'd been sexually abused by my dad, then I should sexually abuse in turn, and that's generational trauma, generational continuation of dysfunction. I taught her how to cook a tagine, lamb and apricot tagine. Had her up standing on a chair, stirring the food, cooking it, helping me slice it and stuff. And man, it was just like I couldn't believe that these two people, friends of mine, left me in charge of their 7-year-old daughter, knowing my history. Now, I think that's probably because she's Chinese and they're Italian, and they might have a much lower incidence rate of paedophilia in those countries than they do in this country.
Mm.
Generational trauma, this is what normally, usually, the abused becomes the abuser.
To get back to you, once you break the cycle of addiction and being imprisoned, you're sort of self-educated by reading a lot of books. How does university then come into play? Like, what university accepts you? You don't have a high school education, right? Or
Fortuitous, sir. Fortuitous. So, people say to me, how the hell did you get to Cambridge University? And I go by equal parts luck and equal parts hard work. So, I was working after rehab. I Now construction is the go-to profession for all criminals, prisoners, ex-prisoners, whatever. There's no CV, there's no interview. You just rock up on site and they say, "What can you do?" "Yeah, come in." And you go, "I can do that, that, that." "Great, see you tomorrow." There's no interview, there's no CV. It's brilliant. So construction was always my go-to employment. And after rehab, I made it up to assistant site manager, trainee assistant site manager. And round about the time the financial bubble burst, I was working as a gate man on the same site for maybe 18 months. And then my managers noticed that a lot of construction sites were being mothballed. And they said, something's in the pipeline, man. You've been really good with us here. I mean, they're friends of mine now, and they said there were times when we almost sacked you and let you go because I was playing with a festival band, and often I wouldn't be there on a Monday morning because I've been playing at a festival with my band I was with for 15 years, and then I'd rock up on a Tuesday and all that kind of. But anyway, they said, listen, and they went, something's going down, man. Not sure what it is, but how do you like a contract? Job as a general foreman. I said, what's the deal? Because you get a company van, you get pension, family health care, blah, blah, salary, all that. I said, where do I sign? So, yeah, I've got a job.
Yeah. Norman the foreman.
Yeah. I stayed there. I stayed there for 3 years, and then they got bought out by a French company, and everyone got made redundant, or most, apart from their housing side of things. So suddenly I was out of a job. My girlfriend at the time in Wales, she said, what are you going to do? Get another job as a manager? I said, am I fuck? No, I am not. It's awful. So she'd just finished a university degree to become a social worker. I said, oh no, I'm going to apply for university. So I applied. I didn't have enough UCAS points, which is what you need in this country, because I'd I'd done 2 years of a jazz course. I had my I did get CSEs and O levels as a kid, and I did do 2 years of a jazz course, and I completed the first year. But before the end of the second year's exams, I joined a band and ran away. So I didn't have enough UCAS points. But I applied, and the course leader of the Bachelor of Arts degree I was applying for happened to be a saxophonist. So I rock up for an audition with my saxophone, and he's like, um, right, he played Watermelon Man on the keys, and he was like, "Can you play to this?" So I played the head, and I played the solo and all that. He went, "You're in," just like that. So I'd already done 2 years of jazz jazz college. Now I was doing a university degree, and that's how I got in without enough UCAS points. But the most interesting thing about it is, and this is how I ended up being invited to. Now, mate, it's just mind-boggling. Every day I'd go up and down this glass staircase at university, going to libraries, rehearsal rooms, practice rooms, classrooms, all of it. And through the glass window, I was looking down into Cardiff Prison, my former world. For 2 years, I was just looking at it. I was just like, this is insane. I'm at university, and every day I'm watching the internal workings of a prison from above. Year three, I had to do work experience. So I said to my course leader, I said, I want to go in there and teach prisoners how to play music, because that's where I learned my music. Saxophone, guitar, I learned it all in prison. And he went, that's a fantastic idea. Okay, cool. So I did. And then I decided to write my dissertation on music programs in prisons. And one of the papers I read for writing my dissertation was the paper I've already told you about. Fuck it. Matza and the desistance process. So that was the only paper at the bottom. There was an email. They've always got an email on them. That was the only one out of 50 papers I might have read. That was the only one I emailed someone. And I was like, wow, this paper's fantastic. Can you point me in the direction of any more papers like this? And she wrote back and said, wow, that's great. You're doing music programs in prisons. One of my students here, she sings for King's College Choir at Cambridge University. She's also doing music programs in prisons. And I was like, wow, this is insane. She said, we're having a seminar next month called The Subversive Good. Why don't you come along? So I did, went to the seminar. The girl called Jasmine, who was doing this program called Sing Inside, she was taking small choirs into prisons near Cambridge. As soon as I got in the room at the seminar, these people, 8 people, stood up at the back of the room and started singing a cappella, Mozart's Requiem or Fauré's Requiem or some shit like that. I don't know. And I was just like, closed my eyes and just loved it. It was just like, oh my God, listen to that. It was like, these guys were like proper King's College Choir, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, after the thing, I said to Ruth, can I grab 10 minutes of your time? She said, you see all these people? They all want 10 minutes of my time. I've got to go and get my daughter from school. But here's my address. Jasmine will give you the tourist thing. She'll show you around Queen's, Trinity, and King's College. Then come to my house and we can talk. Went to her house. She cooked food. Tell me your life story. I did. She said, tell you what, do well at your degree and then apply to come here and I'll be your supervisor. I was like, what the fuck?
Hey, that's
Now,
nepotism. She can't just pick her students, can she? There's meant to be some kind of process. I'm gonna call them.
it don't matter. She's left. She's left now. Do you know why she left? Because
Your admission has now. Hey, you're devaluing my Cambridge degree that I'm doing nothing with, by the way. So,
me too. Nothing with nothing. But no. Basically, she started off this program called Learning Together. Her name's Ruth Armstrong. She started the Learning Together program. Now, do you remember the Fishmonger Hall terrorist attack in London Bridge?
yeah, yeah.
That was her thing. That was the fifth anniversary celebration of her initiative. When that guy who pulled the wool over all of their eyes stabbed two of my friends to death. Saskia Jones was my classmate,
Yeah.
and Jack Merritt was a PhD candidate who used to give us lessons. Both lovely people.
I believe Jack's girlfriend went to Cambridge with me. I think, or
Really?
if not girlfriend, a very close friend or something, because I remember someone in
Exactly.
my circles being very
Man,
badly affected by that as well. Yeah. So yeah, that was terrible.
man, man. Well, I mean, what college were you in? Cambridge. What
St.
college?
Edmunds, Eddie's,
Yeah, we had
where they hide the old, the sick, and the lame. You know.
yeah, man. That's you didn't have to say that. It's evident.
Yeah, with your backstory, how come you weren't there with us? How did you go to end up in Darwin? That's so young and fresh and rich. Come on, what's that?
I know why. I know why. I think I have a suspicion. But before I do that, Darwin, during my May ball year, there was construction going on in Darwin. So we had a joint May ball with Eddie's. So my first May ball was Darwin College at St Edmunds College. It was great.
Ah,
Loads of land. You got
yeah,
loads of fields and stuff. Yeah, brilliant.
yeah, yeah.
Anyway, I think I got sent to Darwin because someone somewhere looked at my photo and went, Jesus Christ, this guy's got fucking dreadlocks. Where the? Because I knew if they put me in King's or Trinity, I'd have punched some like member of Parliament's son in the face the minute he said something wrong to me. That didn't happen.
We're gonna get to that. So, like, long story short, you leveraged like this is really cool and impressive and inspiring, kind of, but also fun. That you leverage the skill you learned, which is music, into the first degree, because a music degree they'll give you credit for actually knowing how to play. Therefore, you didn't
Yeah,
have to have every piece of traditional education in the background, and then you leveraged that degree into doing something interesting with prisons and got into Cambridge for your masters. I mean, that's great.
mate. The universe looks out for me. I'm sure of it. I don't believe in deities. We've discussed this. No deities, please. But I do believe in Gaia or the universe. So the
Okay.
universe looks out for me at all times. And that's exactly what happened.
You can come back and talk about that too, because I might have some spicy things about that. I think this believing in universe thing might just be another word for God, mate. You can't get away that
Oh,
easily over
mate.
here.
Hey, I read the Bible. I had 28 days solitary confinement. 28 days solitary confinement because I graffitied the books and I graffitied the cell. I stayed awake all night graffitiing their brand new white painted cell. And I was given 28 days and they removed all my books, pens, letters, everything. And every day this vicar would come in and I was like, oh, geez, yeah, I'm all right, mate. Can you just fuck off? And then the next day I went, hang on a minute, mate, you can give me a book, can't you? They've taken all my books. You can give me a book, can't you? And he went, yes, my son. He gave me the book. I read the whole fucking Bible in 28 days, cover to cover.
Cool. So you know what the name of this show comes from then? Do you remember?
Yeah, man.
There's a talking
Talking
donkey.
ass.
There's a
Yeah,
talking
there is.
donkey in the yeah. Fuck, that was
There's a
such a
lot of
weird
things in
story.
that book.
I grew up with some of these stories, and there's a lot of weird things that sticks to your mind. And when I started doing talking into a microphone, that was an obvious one for me. It's like it has to be ass. It can't be anything else, you know. Uh, but yeah,
Talking ass.
so
When I heard it, I just thought, do I want to be associated with something called talking ass?
there are worse things about me that you might not want to be associated with. We're building a holistic picture of humanity where somebody's got to be the asshole. You see, someone's got to be the asshole, right? The guests
So
are all nice,
someone has to be.
but
Someone has
yeah.
to be.
So you're meeting these kids. How do you feel now with your background? You're saying you might have punched someone somewhere fancier. How do you feel about now and seeing all these spoiled brats who went to private school and like, did you get along with them?
No, I just not my thing at all, man. Now the thing about Darwin College, I went there, so it was 2017, 2018 was my master's year. It was a 12-month course, not 9 months, because it was so difficult to get prisoners access, and they knew that. So it becomes 12 months instead of nine. But my year, 2017, 2018, Darwin College had 600 students from 76 different countries. 600 students from 76 different countries. And most of those countries have no idea about the British social class system. So the fact that I'd speak like I'm from the south of England, working class, or I'm from London, would mean nothing to them. They'll struggle to understand a posh Englishman or a working class Englishman. So I think someone looked at me and went, right, geez, this guy's got dreadlocks. Where are we going to stick him? Put him in Darwin, right? Darwin. And it worked. They were all from Brazil. I'm on now for me, the Darwin College Facebook group is Airbnb around the world. It don't matter where I land, man. I could just go, right, I'm in Rio. Who's around? I'm in Shenzhen. Who's knocking around? I'm in Moscow. Anyone around? Man, someone within 100 miles is going to go, come and stay with us.
Yeah. And that's really cool. I mean, you know that creepy word they always say, networking, actually
Yeah.
is just fucking talking to people and making friends. That's a network. Like, people
It's
who try,
exactly what it is.
yeah,
Exactly that, man.
people who try to create that on purpose are like the creepiest people you'll meet. Like trying to stand around and intentionally go network somewhere. Like, whoa,
No,
okay,
well, I'll tell you what, you must know Darbar, right?
yeah.
Darbar is the place to be in Cambridge. It's mad. I don't remember any other bar in Cambridge having that kind of kudos.
Yeah. For me, yes. Darwin, anywhere where there was slightly older people who had done something else in life too. So Eddie's, Darwin, Hawks Club, I played sports, so at the athletes club, you'd
Yeah.
meet like anywhere where there were real human beings. Like I didn't meet you, but I would have gone along great with you, I imagine, because
What year were you there?
2014 to 17. So just before.
Man, I got there the year you left. So you're PhD, yeah?
No, no, I did an undergrad.
Oh, that's why. That's why. Okay, yeah. I mean, so did Eddie's have undergrads or not?
Yeah, yeah, Eddie's has like a few mature undergrads, they're called.
The thing about Darwin is it's no undergrads. It's all postgrad.
Yeah, only grads. Yeah, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, so that's priceless, basically priceless. There were no fucking idiots, really.
Yeah. And that must have been good for you because even my background is nowhere near as wild as yours, but even I found it sometimes a little strange to be talking to like a 19-year-old who had not yet seen anything in real life. Like not done an honest day's work. By the way, I'm not saying the private school kids after that I ended up working for one. They're not like shit kids or anything. They're great kids generally. I'm saying
No, they're just
they're
inexperienced, like
yeah,
green.
exactly. They're not a
So
real
green,
human
man.
being yet.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the best way to put it.
Yeah. So, but you survived Cambridge without any major altercations, though, I guess, because
No,
we're still
not at
here.
all.
Yeah.
Not at all. Not at all. I had nothing but trouble. So I spent every night in the bar. They said, Matt, who ran the bar, after I left, he said there was a noticeable drop in brewdog sales because I was drinking 6 pints every night. And when I finished my masters, funnily enough, one drunken evening, one of the chefs upstairs in the kitchens of Darwin, he thought it'd be a great idea if we ran upstairs and spoke to the. This is at the end of it was quite late, so the formal dinner was still going on. So the catering manager was still there. He said, "Why don't we go and ask Ivan to give you a job?" So I ran upstairs, said to Ivan, the catering manager, "Ivan, can you give me a job? Because the college had lent me 3 grand. I loved Darbar. I didn't want to leave, and I wanted to hang around." And he went, "Come back and see me tomorrow when you're sober," which I did. And after finishing my degree, I got a job and worked as a waiter at Darwin Catering for 8 months.
Hey, a lot of graduates don't get a job at all, so
Everyone, man, they were going, to begin with, it was crazy. They were just going, "What the fuck are you doing, man? You got a master's from Cambridge. What are you doing?" I said, "I'm serving you food, mate. What do you think? What's it look like?" But it was hilarious because I was 70% serving formal dinners and 30% being served at formal dinners. And when I was serving them, my mates were going, quick, Ivan's not looking. And I'd pour their glass of wine and then bend down and neck half of it. And then it was fantastic. But I kept getting in so much fucking trouble.
Someone would paint this into some kind of really lame and boring, what would you call it, symbolic encounter of the British working class and the upper class, but we're not gonna do any of that nonsense. I'm
We're
just
not
gonna
going down that road.
Yeah. I'm just gonna say that a Cambridge degree doesn't instantly buy you a job in like investment banking. My first job, I had quite a bad golf addiction, which is like heroin addiction but slightly healthier. Still a
Yeah.
disease. So I built my life around getting around daylight hours. So I had to have like a really shitty entry level, like any monkey could have done that job. Like I had a Cambridge degree, but I had to have this really weird, awful entry level job because I had to get out by 3 so that I could get to the golf course. I don't know. I was a weird guy too. That like
But you're right. I said to my supervisor, Ben, I was like, what can I do with a master's degree? And I was only offered one fucking job. One job I was offered after finishing my degree. And it was Ruth, the Learning Together girl. She emailed me and said, this program in London, they're going into London prisons and teaching people how to decorate and get involved in the construction industry and all that. And I thought, that sounds great. Really good. I could do that. But I have an aversion to prisons. Returning to prison, Cardiff prison and HMP ISIS, I fucking hated every minute of it. I hated every minute of being around those key swinging fucking monkeys. I hated being within the corridors, the cells, the clanging doors, all of it. It just, obviously, why wouldn't I have an aversion to it? Anyway, so I realised I don't want to work in prisons. But this job was an outcomes analyst. Imagine becoming an outcomes analyst,
that's
dealing
an
with
awesome title.
stats. Mate, it fucking sounds shit. It sounds like, you got to, oh, anyway, I just turned that down and I turned down any, and my supervisor just said, well, it doesn't really open many doors at all unless you want to work in prisons or in probation. And I was like, no thanks, not at all. So
So
anyway,
what?
I
Back to
worked in, I
construction
worked,
then.
well, catering in, Darwin. But I kept getting in trouble, I'd be in the bar at night and I'd have to get up at 7 in the morning. So I'd go and sleep in the study centre underneath the computer tables. And then I'd be there in the morning because I was living in my truck at the time, which was in Grantchester Meadows. And it was a 20-minute walk each way. And I was like, man, it was so much easier to just sleep in the study centre." And then the cleaner came in one morning and caught me. And then I was in trouble. And then something else happened and I was in trouble. And in the end, they were just like, Christian, you're not a fucking student anymore. You're a member of staff. And I was like, oh. Then I became the food officer for the May Ball. They gave me £18,000 to spend on food. It's the most amount of money I've ever spent legally in my life.
I
I
have food for 18 grand. Jesus. That's
A
a
party for 600 people that started at 9 in the evening and finished at 3 in the morning because it's a residential area. It's £18,000. I spent a lot and I did a great success. And the last bad meeting I had with the dean and the I don't know, whatever they're called, all them people, the catering manager, all of them having a meeting there. I'm being pulled over the coals yet again. And I was like, look, I'm going to be the food officer. And then I promise I'm leaving for Georgia the next day. And they were like, you promise? I said, I promise. And I was gone. And then I jumped in a van. The first person I invited to the May Ball was my friend who I'd been working on the festivals with making pizzas. He's a third generation baker who makes pizzas from scratch. And his was the most successful stall in Darwin's Garden at the May Ball.
So then you just went to Georgia, the country, not the state in America. I must.
The country. We jumped in the van the following morning, drove down to Peacehaven, loaded up the van, put a caravan on the back of it. This is a hilarious story. We put the caravan on the back and we drove through Belgium, Germany, Poland. We only stopped at Auschwitz because I saw a sign for Katowice and I was like, shit, Auschwitz is there. So we went there, carried on with the journey, got to Odessa, got a ferry across the Black Sea. En route, the caravan fell to pieces because the road, once you leave Poland, which is an EU nation, you hit Ukraine and the road from Krakowicz to Lviv is so potholed, it destroyed our caravan. We pulled over for a pee, and my pizza making friend, I heard him out the back. He was laughing his head off, and I was like, "What the fuck's he laughing at?" And I went out. He was standing there with the caravan door open. All the cupboards on the ceiling had fallen to the floor. Everything had been destroyed inside the caravan. The roof was peeled back like a sardine can, and the front window was ready to fall out onto the road. And he was like, "Ah, there's some woods over there. Let's go and burn it in the woods." And I was like, "Are you fucking stupid? You make a shit criminal. Look, we've just come through Krakovec. They've written down the caravan, the bread making machine in the back, the caravan, the van, everything. They've made an inventory of everything, and you want to burn the caravan in the woods. We're going to get to Odessa, and they're going to go, where's the caravan? Oh yeah, there's a report of a caravan burnt in the woods near Lviv." Anyway, long story short, we found a policeman who got in touch with a farmer who took the caravan off our hands because he was quite happy to have a break trailer. And then we went to Odessa, across the Black Sea, and then a week later, I was hospitalised for 14 days with intravenous antibiotics in my arm for 14 days because I went crazy with the fever. I was hallucinating and going mad. And it turns out they were all the doctors were just like, "What is this?" It was a mystery illness. They released me even though the antibiotics didn't work, and it was probably one of the first cases of COVID because I just spent 48 hours crossing the Black Sea on a ferry with lorry drivers from Latvia, Russia, Poland, Italy, and France. But this was in July 2019. Apparently, COVID didn't start until January 2020.
Yeah,
Rubbish.
well,
I don't
I yeah, that is rubbish. I had it just
rubbish.
before then in December 2019. Me and a friend got it from Heathrow or whatever.
July 2019.
That's
Definitely,
very early.
definitely.
That's
It's
definitely
really
earlier than
early,
I
man.
did.
It was really early. The doctors were like, "We're going to release you," but in the next morning they said, "Before we release you, we're going to X-ray your lungs," and they X-rayed them, and they said it's still active. We don't know what's going on here. The antibiotics aren't working. You've still got it, but fuck it, we're just going to release you. And they told me to blow up balloons. They said blow up balloons to increase your lung capacity. I said, what about saxophone? They went, wow, even better.
Well, that worked out.
So
Yeah.
yeah, man. So I didn't die. Phew.
Yeah.
But Georgia was great.
And then you've spent your life working what music, other jobs, and then traveling, learning new languages. You've become like this sort of urban polymath kind of a
Fucking
philosopher.
weird, man. I speak
Yeah.
reasonably good French because I bust in France so often. I speak a little bit of I can just, basic Italian. I'm working with so many Romanians at the moment. I'm learning some Romanian shit. But Chinese, I've spent 4 grand in 5 years learning Putonghua, Mandarin. And Georgia, I lived there for a year. It was great. Then COVID happened and I had to leave. So my friend said to me, "Why don't you come and live with us? And you need to write your book." And they invited me to Gers, which is near Toulouse. I could see the Pyrenees. I was there, outdoor pool, 5 bedroom guest house because they bought an ashram for meditation retreat and yoga and all that stuff. I had the bedroom guest house pretty much to myself for 10 weeks, writing my book every night, just drinking a bottle of Armagnac or a bottle of red wine every night, just pumping out this book. I wrote 250 pages in 10 weeks.
Awesome. I mean, first of all, congratulations. I should write a book, people say, but I never sat down and just did it. It requires some kind of boost of inspiration that I've never been
It
blessed with
requires a
yet.
lockdown to start with.
Yeah, well, that would have helped. I should have done it then, but I don't know what I fucking did during the lockdown. Man, it would make so much sense if I told you this started during the lockdown. No. 5 years later, like, what? Why the fuck wasn't I doing this then? Yeah,
Yeah, man,
weird.
exactly right.
Yeah, I threw away the lock. To be honest, lockdown had lovely weather, and I was in a place where I had access to the outdoors, so I wasn't like locked
Yeah,
inside masturbating all day. I was actually like lucky enough to have a dog and exercise and sun and even the sea. Like I was all right, I guess. Well, lucky.
man, same. I was in the middle of nowhere. I had a swimming pool, outdoor pool, and I could just go running, jogging outside. I was surrounded by Armagnac vineyards and whatnot, and it was just like, it didn't really affect me really, apart from having to stay at that place, which was great. I had my friends, mum and dad, and 2 teenage children, musicians, all of them, and I was just like pumping out the words to my book, sitting, enjoying the wine and things going on, getting hammered, and fucking enjoying the freedom.
So,
Yeah.
Where can people find it, by the way? What's it called? I'll include all
It's
the
not
links you want of it.
it's not published yet. If you just include the link to my website, like I say, my Facebook and Instagram's on there, and people can follow my website, my face, add friends on, or follow me on Facebook and Instagram. Um, at the moment, I've got probably 70 pages of the manuscript left to check for typos before sending it to my editor in New York. So all in all, you're talking 3 or 4 months.
All right. Cool. That's awesome. I will read it immediately, man, and I hope all the listeners do as well. We'll put the link to the website. And then we finish on this show with public service announcements, and you sent me a charity you wanted to talk about, your friend's charity.
Yeah, the Flying Seagulls project, man. Oh, geez, these guys, man. Now, I probably ought to have become part of it, but my friend started the charity in 2008, but it didn't really get big until I think I met him at Glasgow because I used to play in the circus tent in the kids' field at Glastonbury, teaching kids how to unicycle and juggle and poi and all that kind of stuff. And I met Ash there. He's a trumpet man, and we jammed together on sax and trumpet. And it was kind of like after 2015, 16, his charity really kicked off. He was going to the jungle and islands in Greece and just kids who'd lost their parents on rubber boats and stuff. And these camps full of kids, orphan kids. And they're clowning and juggling and playing music and joking and making them happy. It's such a organic charity. I hate charities normally because I won't give to charities because they'll end up, they just pay for themselves for a 5 bedroom house in Sandhurst and all that. But Ash's charity, the Flying Seagulls project, it's amazing.
Yeah, I'll put that in the show notes. But like for me, I don't even know what to say. That maybe just with like prisons, man. Like I think this has opened our eyes to thinking about like what kind of people and from what circumstances they end up there, and
Yeah,
just
yeah,
that they don't fucking help, right?
yeah,
Yeah, I guess what people can do is if you know any people just getting out of prison, like just trying to be understanding and helping rather than judging, because I was certainly a judgy cunt most of my life about that kind of stuff.
yeah, yeah. Of course, but you don't know anything about their backstory.
Exactly. And hey, amazing to meet you, man. Like such a I'm so such a fascinating story. If it wasn't for that technical glitch, I would have been happy to talk to you for hours and hours. But we'll stay in touch, man. I'll let you know when.
Yeah, well, there you go. So we need to. You let me know when all this is posted, and we need to hook up and just shoot the breeze, talk some shit, and have some
Yeah,
beers. Yeah,
fantastic. Cool.
cool,
So cool,
man.
man.
Great.
Thanks
Thank
for
you
the
so much.
thanks for your
You
time.
too. Yeah,
All
man.
right.
No problem.
See you. And everyone, remember to get Christian's book, Resilient Childhood Adversity to Cambridge University. The links are in the show notes, and follow him on his social medias and his website. And follow this show and share with a friend and send email and feedback through the website. Cheers.